seems to be a feeling of mistrust in the air.
I wonder why.
Have you come for revenge, Mr. Taylor? Do you perhaps have a revolver or some other lethal weapon with you?
I turned all those in when I got this button, Anselmo. I'm as surprised as you are. If you are.
I am, believe me. As for you, what would you do if I were to call Hubert?
I'm not a hero, Anselmo. I'd run like a deer.
Then you have my word. He will not molest you. A mere figure of speech, my word is worthless. What are you doing here?
I was told to come.
By whom?
Phyllis.
Phyllis? We were closely associated at one time. Professionally, of course. Dear, loyal, sentimental little Phyllis. Come sit here, Mr. Taylor. There is a vast difference in comfort between these chairs and those upon which our clients wait for a consultation. Besides, the lighting effect will set the proper mood of mystery and intrigue as we talk.
What about the lighting effect in my eyes last night? What about the beating I took?
I wish with all my heart that I could take it back.
Another figure of speech. You haven't got a heart.
True, but I've got a brain, and it was stupid of me. I apologize. Please, sit down.
What do I get, my palm read or my horoscope?
Let us use cards, Mr. Taylor. Let us place them face up on the table. In this case, an imitation crystal ball.
I'll listen for a while.
At the present time, young man, I am nothing more than a small-time chiseler. I say this frankly and bitterly because I do not wish to be a small-time chiseler. It's a humiliating position. Still, it's better than being an honest man, which I would find intolerable. I was once a great thief and a magnificent scoundrel. I had my reverses, who has not? And I will omit the story of my descent to my present squalid condition. It would only bore you and incriminate me. I waited and worked day and night for a chance to come back. 3 years ago, I had that chance in my hands. Name a fantastic sum of money, Mr. Taylor.
$2 million.
You've put one of your cards alongside mine. Thank you. As my hands closed on it, the money disappeared like that. And with it, a Mr. Larry Cravat. So understand my position. For 3 years I have lived in this stink, waiting for some hope, some word. Then yesterday it came. From a Turkish bath, from a nightclub. I approached you, you were reluctant. You wouldn't say why you were looking for him. You didn't know why he wrote to you, why the $5,000 deposit, not even where he was. Mr. Taylor, I had to make you understand that there was nothing I would not do to find Larry Cravat.
I got the idea. I understood it the second time I passed out, but I can't help you, Anselmo. I don't know any other answers than the ones I gave.
That I do not believe.
Is this where we sent for Hubert and his rubber shillelagh?
Mr. Taylor, I do not even have to know where Cravat is. I want you just to communicate with him for me.
I can't. I wouldn't know how.
That I do not believe either. Since your arrival, there has been considerable activity connected with him. You cannot be unconcerned with it. You cannot be without some contact, some connection.
And supposing I could reach Cravat, what would the message be?
Phyllis, darling.
You look like a couple of witches. What cooks?
How thoughtful of you, little one, to send dear Mr. Taylor to me.
Stop talking like Bela Lugosi. How did you know where to find me?
I didn't know I was going to find you. I got a note that said Larry Cravat was at 4211 and a half Summit.
I don't get it.
From whom was the note?
I don't know. And don't try to beat it out of me. I don't know.
Why would anybody want to tie me in with Larry Cravat?
Anybody. I can think of somebody who would have every reason in the world. Mr. Cravat himself.
Did you know him?
We just met. I was going to know him a lot better. And Zelmo...
The professional relationship which I mentioned earlier. We are still partners, Phyllis. Are we not?
Don't start that now. Don't try to mix me up. Till you called me yesterday, Cravat was a name in an old phone book. You sent me after Taylor. All right, I went. After all, I'm smart, Anselmo. You think I'd bring him down to that dump if I were on my own? Do you think I'd send him to you?
Sit down and listen. I was about to give Mr. Taylor a message for Larry Cravat.
Then you do know.
I said, listen! This is what I want you to tell him. That even $2 million is of no use to a man in the electric chair.
Suppose he doesn't understand the message.
He will.
Suppose he says he doesn't. Suppose he wants to know where you fit in.
A reasonable question which I will answer. Mr. Cravat is wanted by the police for a murder which occurred on Terminal Dock. This very dock, 3 years ago. The murdered man was a gentleman from the East, Mr. Steele, I believe. The police have evidence that Mr. Cravat and another man were on the dock that night. They do not know who the other man was. However, Mr. Cravat's immediate and prolonged absence has strengthened their belief that Mr. Cravat was the murderer and that the identity of the other man is relatively unimportant.
Let's say Cravat knows all that. He still doesn't know where you fit in.
For a considerable amount of money, subject to negotiation, of course, I will present the police with the other man on the dock that night. He will confess to the murder and free Cravat of suspicion.
How do you happen to know who he is?
If he's reluctant to confess, the police will find a suicide and a signed confession, complete in every detail. That might be better in any case.
What makes you think Cravat will go for a crummy deal like that?
Because it's to his advantage. Because it's probably to your advantage as well.
What do you mean by that?
Mr. Cravat deposited $5,000 to your account. Why? He was not a charitable man. It is more likely that he was paying for services rendered. What were you being paid for? There is every likelihood that the unidentified gentleman on the dock that night was you, Mr. Taylor.